It's time to go inside the mega events with some of the biggest names in the trillion-dollar world of sports. Let's go beyond the scoreboard with the sports professor, Rick Horrow.
I'm the sports professor, Rick Horrow. Welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, Inside the Mega Events. It's a trillion-dollar sports business, to be sure, and about 50 to 60% of those dollars are wrapped up in the mega events, the championships, Super Bowls, All-Star Games, World Series, Wimbledon, tennis majors, golf majors, NASCAR championships, IndyCar championships, Ryder Cup. All of those too numerous to mention. I'm in my office to kick off the show, but I'm not here a lot. I'll be on the road on a weekly basis to bring you the inside tips from those major events. The balance sheets, who wins, who loses, the interviews, how you put on the events, and how you sustain them. This is all brought to you by Edelman Financial.
Money doesn't come with instructions. That's why we created Edelman Financial Services to help you with everything from college and retirement planning to managing your investments, helping you achieve retirement security. We're among the nation's top financial advisors. Come see how we can help you.
Welcome to EVERFI. My name is John Chapman. I'm one of the co-founders of the organization. It's my pleasure, and it's always exciting to host folks around topics like we're going to cover tonight, around the power of sports and philanthropy, with a really distinguished and exciting group of guests to offer you their perspective. But I'm just excited also to share with you our new office. We launched it officially a couple weeks ago. We had Mayor Bowser here with Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live as our special guest of honor, and it was an exciting day. So it's always fun to have new guests here to see where we operate at EVERFI. So wanted to take just a couple of minutes to introduce you to EVERFI, and then I'm going to hand it over to our moderator for the evening, Rick Horrow. So if you don't know about EVERFI, we are an education company that builds programs that teach critical skills to learners and communities all around the world. In fact, we do that in three different areas: K-12, the university space, and in the workplace. And we really empower those organizations in each of those areas to with an operating system that helps them teach critical skills to communities they care about. So those critical skills could be financial literacy or health and wellness in K-12. It could be sexual assault prevention and alcohol education on a college campus. It could be diversity, equity, and inclusion, and global harassment in the workplace. So we cover a lot of important issues that put a lot of pressure on communities. And so one of the ways in which we do that is we actually bring the private sector together with communities they care about. And our private sector partners are a really diverse set of organizations. And the one subset of those organizations is what we're here to talk most about tonight. A little over 5.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to sit in front of Commissioner Gary Bettman at the NHL headquarters in New York City and pitch him what I had always had as a vision and an idea, which was that pro sports leagues should be leagues that power and help promote some of the topics that EVERFI teaches in schools. And wouldn't that be a really powerful platform to get an entire league behind one of our content areas and allow them to use their platform, use their voice to teach young kids across the country about an important issue. And so we pitched Commissioner Bettman and his team and folks from the NHL Players Association, since it was a joint initiative, the idea of using the game of hockey to teach young kids about STEM-based careers. STEM-based careers, technical jobs, are the jobs of the future. They're the types of jobs that are underfilled today. And wouldn't it be great if not only kids could learn about hockey or maybe get excited about hockey, and through that excitement actually learn some important skills based around STEM and STEM careers. And so fast forward 5.5 years later, you see up here, future goals. Hockey teaches kids how to score with STEM. 5.5 years later, we've reached over 3.5 million students with that program across all 31 NHL markets to be able to learn about STEM careers through the game of hockey. And it's really emblematic of the power of sport to create a really unique lens to learn these types of topic areas. And we've since gone on to do it, you'll hear about it from some of our panelists today, to work with a number of the other major US pro sports leagues. And then lastly, our first international league that we started a partnership with last year, the English Premier League. And what's unique and exciting about that, which I want to make sure I call out this evening before we get going with our program, is we're not just a company based here in North America, headquartered in DC. As of this week, we are now a global company. We made an acquisition of an organization called EdComs. It's based in London. Interestingly enough, they actually, we met them through joint work we do together for the Premier League. They ran a school program for the Premier League in the UK. We were running a version of that here in the US. And we realized we had a lot in common, and collectively we could do more and have more impact. So not only are we going to be able to continue to have impact through the power of sport, but that's going to be now done on a global scale as we move forward and into the coming years. So with that quick introduction and background of why we're here, who we're here to talk about, I want to go ahead and thank Rick Horrow, who wrote an awesome book over there, the Sports Business Handbook, which you can read my chapter first, and then you can read the rest of the chapters.
Assuming you continue to want to read.
Yeah. But it's an incredible compilation of voices in sports, some of which you'll hear tonight, talking about the real essentials to running and having impact in sports. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick, who's going to introduce our first speaker this evening.
John's the best. We don't have time for applause. We've got to get Phil out of here before he leaves. And Mascot Books are the guys that are the publishing partner of ours. And Naren Ariel and his guys are over there, and take a look at the book, and we'll sign them and get them all done for those of you who don't have any, or for those of you who only have one and may need more. So we have no problem with any of that. Please do that after this. By the way, I just wanted to tell you that it's really an honor to work with the EVERFI folks. They are truly a unique company, and now a very unique global company. The more you know about EVERFI, the more you like them. Before we get into the rest of the panel, I just want to give you a couple of perspectives. 50 years ago, you realize the average Major League Baseball salary was $29,000. Today, it's over $4.5 million. Now I'm talking about average. The price of a 30-second Super Bowl ad was $72,500 on two competing networks at the same exact time. Now it's over $5 million. The Super Bowl ticket face, I remember I was at that game, $15. And today you can't buy it at face, by the way, but if you wanted to buy a Super Bowl ticket, it would cost you $3,000 to $5,000 depending on where you are and how the seats were assigned. The bottom line is 50 years in the sports business is something to covet and to celebrate. Lucky enough to find people who either were friends or said they were friends enough to contribute 100 or so chapters, sidebars, from Mark Lazarus, and Damon Phillips is here from NBC Sports today, to Nick Sakevich, to Phil DiPicciotto, Paul Tagliabue, John Chapman, the definitive sports luminaries around the country. And the other sports luminaries, if you bother to want to read about them, they're in the book as well. Seriously, it is a labor of love. It's fairly unique, and one of the things we want to do today is to probe the different perspectives of the business of sports with a primary emphasis on philanthropy today. We're doing this around the country, and we're doing this in a lot of different cities. We did one in Houston. We did one in a combination of Harvard Law, Harvard Business. We're doing it in New York. And in each of those cities, we're talking about the 50 greatest sports business moments in those cities. A little bit different here. We talked about the philanthropic moments in Washington, but around the world, and who better to host that kind of discussion, obviously, than EVERFI. But before we start, I'd like to introduce a 35-year veteran of the agency business, I think probably longer, but he was the founder of Octagon and is the president. He's really been a champion of how agency should be and what happens in sports agency. For example, the elimination of tobacco advertising in NASCAR and racing, the introduction of healthier drinks in the New York City public school system. It's all, or primarily, or partially, Phil DiPicciotto, the founder and president of Octagon. Phil has a meeting on the Hill, so we're going to take a few minutes with Phil before we start doing anything else. Phil DiPicciotto. Well, you know, he's getting up there, so we should have him sit down. You okay? You want to stand up?
Getting up there and what terms?
I'm kidding. Compared to both of us. So, in the sports business handbook, you wrote that sports is a reflection of society, and nowhere is it more appropriate than the emergence of a truly connected global sports landscape. That's one of your major themes. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, when I started, there was cable TV in its infancy. There was no internet. You had the combination of brands who were supporting the talents of athletes, and they met at events, at an event platform, and the event platform was distributed through the media to a less than full global world, because Russia and the Soviet Union was quite closed, and China and parts of Asia around it were quite closed. So you had a world population that was largely English-speaking and maybe the developed part of Europe, and that has all changed completely in the last 35 years.
So taking that a little further, if you target markets today and you were ready to start a agency that serviced that particular country or that demographic, where would you go?
I'd stay right here in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
But there's a logic to that.
Yeah.
So I think what one would look for, and it's not unique to the sports business, but sports is a little bit of a microcosm of the world and society. I think you need three things. You need to look for a growing population. You need a focus on the middle class, so people who can consume whatever the content is that you're going to produce. And you need access to technology. You really can't do very much these days without it. And I guess I would add political stability would be nice, because that leads to economic stability. There aren't very many places in the world that tick off all of those boxes right now.
And obviously the sports related to those countries or demographics, there are superstars involved in all of them, and Octagon has done an incredible job in creating best practices for athlete representation, event development, corporate responsibility, corporate representation, on and on and on. The focus on athletes in a changing world where social media provides so many opportunities for reach, but also so many opportunities for major mistakes. How does Octagon navigate that world?
Well, very often athletes or other entertainers think that they understand social media because they've grown up with it, especially the younger players now coming into these leagues. But they don't understand the business of it, and they don't necessarily have enough concern about the risks, because there's great power in celebrity. That power can be a positive power, it can be a negative power. So we have to educate from the very beginning, figure out how much they really know and understand, how dedicated they are to being participatory. You have to be on, if not every minute, then at least every day. And then be aware of the risks that go along with that. For those who are more savvy, it's all about development of a platform that carries value. So that could be podcasts, it could be e-commerce, could go in all kinds of different directions, but it's our job to amplify what they want to contribute on social media.
And Damon would probably tell us later on that today's e-broadcast or e-commerce and podcast is tomorrow's whatever you call it, and we don't even know what it is, but it's evolving. And so how do you keep up with evolving media platforms, evolving technology and the like?
You look for the parallels. Everything that exists now has existed in some form earlier, and we all tend to reinvent the wheel with everything we do. But if you look for the commonalities, then you try to modernize it and understand that there are really two competing business forces in the world. One is scale and scope. If you're big and you can reach everybody, the mass audience that Paul so successfully built with football and the Super Bowl and the league, for example, powerful way to reach consumers around the world. And the other is niche audience. The right small niche audience can be more valuable than a broad audience that isn't quite as aligned with what you're trying to do. So it's both of those.
You're a process guy. Efficiency is very important to you. And so as philanthropy has increased 12% year over year over the last few years, you look for opportunities to guide athlete and corporate philanthropy. So at the risk of answering a leading question, how do you view EVERFI as moving forward in this world, and what would you do to provide advice for your clients in this changing world?
Well, John and I had a nice chat earlier, and I got educated on how we can contribute to what you're all doing here at EVERFI, which I think is more than important for us. It's really a responsibility that we find ways to connect the world in ways that do good. And there is an overemphasis on money these days, I think, particularly money that may not be spent in a very efficient way, to use your word. And the platforms that one can use are varied. And in the end of the day, it comes down, I think, to two things. One, a real authentic vision and mission on how you want to make your contribution to the world. Some people will be very education focused. I think people who are well educated at least understand how important the education platform is. And then you want to find the very best partners, because the world is too complicated to do it alone, and many ways to give back. But if you've got good partners, you'll find a way to success. So we'll keep looking at trying to help.
Awesome. Finally, you also write that understanding how different cultures interact with sport is critical for good decision making, and the breadth of related expertise housed in the global agencies is an essential source of both value creation and risk management. You covered this a little bit before, but give us a good example of a moment in which Octagon was able to create a cultural bridge or social change or social good.
One recent example is that we advised Luna Bar. You may have heard what they did in matching the signing bonus amounts that the women's national soccer team were getting to what the men were getting. There was approximately a $31,000 per player difference, and we thought that that was an important platform for them and a way for them to make a statement about who they are and also do social good. We also advised Allie Raceman in her involvement with the now very visible Me Too movement here, especially with the Olympic Committee and USA Gymnastics, and did something similar with Michael Phelps, who has really become the premier worldwide spokesperson for mental health. So these last two are all three platforms, mental health and gender equality and sexual activity awareness and propriety, I think are ideas that cross cultures and are foundational to any decent society, and we're feeling a great responsibility to try to play our part in making those things better.
That was a tremendous answer. And my final question, which was really important, given your precision with timing, I promised that you would be out of here at 6:35. It's 6:37, but the last 2 minutes were your filibuster. Will you hold that against me?
Actually, Rick promised 6:25.
Oh, I
so
mean 6:25.
His math.
At 6:27. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't tell time.
And Paul Tagliabue and I were talking, and he reminded me that actually sports started to develop 60 years ago. So Rick's got this special power of 10, and I'm sure he's going to entertain you with many more examples of that. And thank you very much for letting me come.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.